Howdy, Jake here. I want to talk a little bit on a lengthy video and we're going to go different places in this. There's going to be a lot of cuts and edits into this video about how to protect your pipes from freezing in this cold weather. So we do have some really cold weather coming up this week, and that's what's motivating this video to go ahead and do what I call the 3 P's. Prepare, protect, and plan. The first stage is to prepare. These are going to be things that you can do when it's not going to be cold for a really long time. You can do it right before it's going to be cold, but it's going to be a lot harder to manage. One of those is if you've got yard hydrants, pipes just sticking up out of the yard with a faucet on it. You'll see one of those videos. I'll stitch that in. You can put a freeze-proof hydrant in, which actually puts the valve in the ground and no pipes that have water in them the whole time, only while in use, are sticking above the ground. Other things you can do to prepare is a really great option, especially if you go on vacation and out of town a lot and don't have someone there to watch your home, is to put in basically a smart water valve that goes on the house that can sense a leak. It's not good to turn the water off in the house and even drain it some sort of ways, because there's always going to be bows and pipes that are higher than some, lower than others, and it's not ever going to completely drain the system. In fact, you can do more damage because that water somewhat works as an insulator, and you can keep water moving so it won't freeze versus it sitting in the belly of a pipe and waiting for that cold weather to happen, and then you're definitely going to have busted pipes. So leave your water on, but this smart water valve, what it does is it'll sense a leak. You'll tell it, hey, we're going on vacation, yada yada yada, or a massive amount of water starts flowing all of a sudden, and it will automatically shut that water off for you. That can save you thousands and thousands of dollars. It'll also give you tips about how much water you're using, and you can be a lot more aware of the environment and saving on your water bills as well. So the next stage is protect. This is the action plan that you should have several weeks before you see cold weather coming, and we went through several different of these tips in several different videos, and we'll show them. Some of those are closing the louvers on the side of your conventional home, would not let that air pass underneath, wrapping those pipes in insulation, using heat tape, putting covers over the outdoor faucets. And some of the ones that we haven't been able to mention yet is more about inside the home, things you could do, letting faucets drip. That's a great idea, especially if you're on city sewer, to let a faucet just drip. And it doesn't take much, just a drip, drip, drip. It doesn't have to be a steady stream, but a couple places in the house, that will help keep that water moving in those pipes. Now, if you've done a good job preparing and protecting, then that really isn't something that you should have to do, keeping stuff drip, because there's heat involved adding to that water, and it should spread throughout the system and you not have any problems. But older homes built before the 80s or so, it's a great idea to leave that faucet dripping. The next thing you can do is open those cabinet doors underneath your sinks. What that does is it lets that air, that warm air from inside, actually interact with that outside wall and the floor right there, where sometimes those pipes come up through a conventional floor, and you can get that heat from the house under those cabinets. So if you got a bunch of junk underneath the cabinets, do a spring cleaning or a winter cleaning, as it's going to be, and get that heat directed underneath there. Don't let the kids come in and close the cabinet doors. Make sure you have that meeting, hey, we're keeping cabinet doors open for a reason. Get the cleaner someplace safe to make everybody safe, and kind of utilize that to keep those pipes from freezing. The next is a plan, and that's the plan of action. That if the preparing and the protecting didn't work, even in extreme situations, sometimes we get pipes that break from old age, from settlement, and the wintertime causes that temperature change, and different materials move at different temperatures. PVC one that gets very brittle, copper gets very brittle when it's cold, and so even though you've done a good job preparing and protecting, you need a plan of action just in case those pipes burst anyway. And that's some of the videos that we are going to link in here that are going to show you basically how to check where your meter's at, where it's at, and can go into preparing and getting a shutoff valve up by the house. It may not be a smart shutoff valve, but one that you can get to quickly. If you don't have a valve near the house, if you need a meter key or just a pair of standard channel locks, by the door, someplace that you know where he is, and maybe educating a couple of the teenage children as well. Hey, this is what happens if I'm not available to go do it. Get the water off, because really every second counts when it comes to a water leak. You could keep it from getting to the hardwood floors. You could keep it, from dripping through the floor. If it's upstairs, you can keep it dripping through the floor and going into the next floor. So every second counts with a water leak, and being prepared is the best way. So we're going to stitch in. It's going to be a crazy video. We're going to stitch in several different little excerpts that we've done all around different places, trying to get you as much visual examples of what's going on. As always, if you've got questions, leave us a comment, like, and share. Thanks so much. So this particular house, we have a lot of space. We can even stand up underneath the house. This isn't a very common, unless you do kind of have like a daylight basement or something. Most of the time it's a crawl space, and what we're looking for in this is where the pipes come out of the ground from the street up into the house. And you can see here's some of these lines that are underneath the house. This particular basement's got a lot of good insulation, and so these pipes don't have to be wrapped. But any other conventional type floor where those pipes are exposed and there's vents to the outside, there's open air. So the first tip is, in the summertime, those outdoor vents that have the little louvers that open and close, get those closed, because that's going to keep that draft, keep that air from blowing underneath that house and really getting to those pipes. The next step is to get insulation on those pipes that you can get from Home Depot or any other big store, local hardware store, and you can wrap those pipes in that black insulation, tape it off, and so that it's protected. If you're still concerned and temps are getting as low as what they are, single digits, it might not be a bad idea, especially if you're going to be gone from home and not using water, is to use what's called a heat tape. And we'll show you that here in a little while, wrapping that pipe in a tape that's actually got heat element in it that you plug into the wall, that's got a thermostat that cuts on when it gets below freezing, to protect your pipes from freezing, even if you're not able to run water in the house, to keep that water moving. We want to talk about heat tape, and the tape's really a bad name. It's kind of more of a heat wire than it is tape. It literally looks like a solid wire. And what you're going to do is, any exposed pipes, so underneath your house on that conventional slab, you're going to see an exposed pipe come out of the ground and go up into the house. And you'll see different pipes go in different directions. You can put normal pipe insulation on a lot of that, but the one coming out of the ground particularly, or any place closer to the exterior walls, some people will use heat tape. And so what you're going to do is you're going to wrap that pipe several times like this around that pipe. Now you can use tape on top of this to hold it in place, zip ties, whatever. They make an insulation tape as well that can go on top of this to make it even better and more insulated. On the other end is going to be a simple plug that plugs into the wall, and it's got a thermostat built into it so that senses the outdoor temperature. When it drops below freezing, it brings that heat tape on and keeps the pipes at a constant temperature so as not to freeze. So here's some of these louvered vents. In the summertime, this is great for conventional because it allows for airflow, because in the south you get a lot of moisture underneath the house. But in the wintertime, you don't have that problem. The air isn't full of moisture and you have a lot of humidity, and we want to protect underneath the house from those cold temperatures. So these louvers, literally very gently, because they'll bend very gently, will just close them just like that. And if you can get access to the back of them while you're insulating pipes and all that, you can always stick a small piece of just fiberglass insulation in this hole for that extra added protection. Not necessary. Mainly these are designed to keep the winter wind out, but that's the way to keep that wind from getting underneath the house. This is worst case scenario. This is what we typically see when we get called out in a hard freeze, because it's so unprotected. This literally is a 3/4 inch PVC water line just teed up, stuck out of the ground, and a faucet on top of it. There's no protection from this whatsoever, because this entire pipe here has water in it. Now, the typical solution to that is what you see, is this is it right here, is to take a towel and then wrap that towel in duct tape, and you can see that's what's been done here. This is kind of a worst case scenario. You forgot it was going to freeze and you have nothing else to use. This is kind of that option. This needs to be protected properly. And then what a lot of times you'll see, and this is still good even if you put proper insulation on this, is the good old 5-gallon bucket trick. Why? Because it keeps that wind directly off blowing over that pipe. It would be better if it went all the way to the ground, but these are just some tips. If it's too late, you don't have time to go to the store's all bought out from stuff because everyone's preparing for winter. This is an option for you to protect these pipes. It would be better call us beforehand in the fall, the spring, or the summer. We'll come in and actually put you in one of those nice freeze-proof faucets where you don't have to ever worry about doing this again. So faucets on the outside of the house, you'll see them come out, they'll be flush with the wall. There are some freeze-proof style faucets where the valve is actually recessed into the wall, so that when you turn the water off, the water drains out of the pipe, and then the valve's closer to the inside of the house where it's nice and warm. I say it's always a good policy to go ahead and put some type of insulation cover on top of those no matter what. One of the only things that you don't have to protect is these what we call freeze-proof yard hydrants, because the valve is actually buried deep into the ground at a consistent temperature, and these valves are not going to freeze unless it gets really, really cold and it freezes down to the ground, which we don't get in Mississippi. The problem I see a lot is, and even on houses, is the water hose will still be attached to these. What this does is it keeps this water in this column and it continues to hold water, so therefore when it gets really cold, it will freeze. So the way to protect these is get the water hose off of everything, insulate your house. The little dog covers that go on the outside are perfect. They've got a little bit of insulation around the outside edge. They're usually styrofoam or some material. If you don't have those, it's supposed to get really cold, you can use t-shirts, you can use anything you can to get the wind off of that and get that protected on the outside of the home. So the place to start is actually where the water, you interact with that water, and that's right past your water meter. That's typically going to be a small black cover out in the yard. This can get covered with leaves. It's usually very close to the street beside the driveway. Those are a bunch of usuallys because I've seen them in the backyard, I've seen them in side yards, I've seen them a lot of different places, even up by the house. So find that place, because that is going to be where you typically access the place to turn off your water. And so here we have this one. This is on a commercial site, but this is our water meter for one of our buildings. And we just kind of wanted to show you what this cover is going to look like and then what's in the hole. So the main thing that you want to care about is that this lid is on this properly and that this little flap isn't missing, because again, we're trying to limit airflow. There's no need to put insulation down here. There's no need to cover this anymore. As long as the lid is on, properly seated down in the hole, you don't have to worry about it freezing. Mississippi and the South doesn't really get cold enough to really penetrate down deep into the ground. The ground is still very warm from the summer and fall sun, and even in between the sun hitting in the wintertime. We want to go over how to turn the water off. Now this is a kind of a zoomed in version of a meter shut off, but it's the same style, and I wanted to show you what's exactly happening when you see it. So the meter would be over here, and this is this long square piece that you see right on top when you open that meter cover, and we'll show you what that is. Now people do have meter keys. A meter key is basically a bent piece of steel with a long handle so that it goes over this and turns it open or close. In your case, once the water line breaks and you're trying to get out into the yard as fast as possible, you want to know where this is and have the tools in order to be able to fix it. Now, don't be alarmed. If you don't have a meter key, then a simple pair of channel lock pliers will work just as good. So that's what we typically use on some, is reach in there and literally you're going to turn that valve closed, which turns that water off. And how you know is the meter's over here and the valve is in line. If it's lined up with the pipe, then it's on. Turn it off, it's off. And that'll shut the water off to your house. And so this is inside the meter. This is a horrible example of a meter, but that's the best case to be able to show you, because we want to be able to show you worst case scenario when you get out in your yard frantically looking how to turn the water off. This is the meter. That's right, way back here, buried down in here. This is the meter cover. It's so covered with mud, it's so hard to read. But this, again, smaller version than what we showed you before. This water's currently off. We cut it off because it's cold inside the warehouse and we don't keep the water on in the winter, but it's off. So to turn it on, we would simply spin it this way and line it up in line with that water meter. These sometimes will be completely buried and you will be off in there with your hands. Sometimes these are full of mud. That is why we always recommend not only knowing where this is, keeping this meter box clean and accessible, unlike we have obviously, but to also have a shutoff valve near your house. So what that's going to do is, the shutoff valve near the house means you don't have to run all the way to the street, and it'll be a small round cover up by the house, and you won't need tools on it because there will actually be a handle on this valve that you can turn on and off with your hand. Very easy to do, very quick to do, and that's what we highly recommend you having. And if you do have one, go ahead and get it found, cleaned, make sure the valve is operational and ready for this hard freeze.